the alien ship crashed into the wheat fields of Kansas on a Tuesday morning, and within 12 hours, the world changed forever. Dr. Elena Vasquez was eating breakfast in her small apartment near MIT when her phone buzzed with 17 urgent messages. She ignored the first few, thinking they were spam, but when she saw the name of her department head flash across the screen with capital letters and exclamation marks, she put down her coffee and read carefully. "Get to Building 7. Now don't talk to anyone, this is real." Elena had spent 15 years studying theoretical physics. She had written papers about faster-than-light travel that her colleagues called creative and imaginative, which were polite ways of saying they thought she was wasting her time. She had never stopped believing that humanity was not alone in the universe, but she had learned to keep those beliefs quiet during faculty meetings. Now, as she drove through empty streets toward the MIT campus, she watched military helicopters pass overhead and wondered if everything she had dreamed about was finally coming true. Building 7 looked normal from the outside, but armed soldiers stood at every entrance. A young lieutenant checked Elena's identification 3 times before letting her through the doors. Inside, she found chaos. Scientists from different departments ran back and forth with tablets and papers. Engineers argued in corners. A general she recognized from television stood near the main laboratory, speaking into multiple phones at once. Dr. Vasquez, a woman in a dark suit, approached her. "I'm Agent Walsh, Department of Defense. Please follow me." Elena followed the agent through corridors she had walked 1,000 times, but everything felt different now. The air itself seemed charged with electricity and fear. When they reached the main physics laboratory, she stopped and stared. A piece of metal the size of a car rested on reinforced platforms in the center of the room. It was curved and smooth, with no visible seams or joints. The surface shifted colors as she watched, moving from silver to blue to gold like oil on water. Symbols she had never seen before covered one edge, glowing faintly with an inner light. "We recovered this from the crash site," Agent Walsh said. "The rest of the ship was destroyed on impact. We believe this is some kind of power core or engine component. We need to understand it, Dr. Vasquez. Fast." Elena moved closer to the object, her heart pounding. She could feel something coming from it, a vibration that seemed to bypass her ears and speak directly to her bones. The symbols along the edge pulsed gently, almost like breathing. "Has anyone touched it?" she asked. 3 technicians tried to take samples. All 3 are in medical care with burns and radiation exposure. We've lost 2 drones that got too close. Standard sensors can't read anything from it. Agent Walsh's voice remained calm, but Elena could see fear in her eyes. "The president has given this operation top priority. Whatever this thing is, we need to understand it before our enemies do." Elena nodded slowly. She understood the politics of the situation, but her mind was already racing with questions that had nothing to do with national security. This was alien technology, real alien technology. Everything she had studied, everything she had theorized about, was sitting in front of her. "I'll need my team," she said. "Dr. Kofi Mensah from Materials Science, Dr. Yuki Tanaka from Quantum Mechanics, and I want full access to all data from the crash site." Agent Walsh nodded. "Whatever you need. You have unlimited resources and unlimited authority. Just find out what this thing does." Over the next 48 hours, Elena barely slept. She gathered her team and they worked in shifts, studying the alien object from every possible angle. Kofi analyzed the material composition and discovered metals that did not exist on the periodic table. Yuki ran quantum sensors and found energy patterns that violated everything they knew about physics. Elena focused on the symbols. She photographed them, measured them, and compared them to every writing system in human history. They matched nothing, but as she stared at them hour after hour, she began to notice patterns. The symbols repeated in sequences. Some were larger than others. Some glowed brighter when the object was measured with certain instruments. On the third day, Alina had a breakthrough. "It's not just writing," she told her team during a midnight meeting. "It's a language, but it's also a kind of programming. These symbols aren't just describing something, they're controlling it. Look here." She pointed to a sequence of 3 symbols that curved around the edge of the object. "Every time we measure energy output, these 3 symbols light up. They're connected to the power flow. If we can understand the grammar of this language, we might be able to communicate with the device." Kofi shook his head. "How do you communicate with a machine?" "You give it instructions," Alina said. "You write code. That's what programming is. And I think these symbols are the aliens' version of code." Yuki leaned forward, her eyes bright with excitement. "Are you saying this device is like a computer?" "I'm saying it might be something much more advanced than a computer, but the principle is the same. We just need to learn the language." They worked for another week, making slow progress. Alina developed a theory about the symbol sequences and tested it by exposing the object to different types of energy. When she was right, the symbols responded with new patterns. When she was wrong, nothing happened. It was like solving a puzzle in a language she had never heard, but she refused to give up. Meanwhile, the world outside was falling apart. News of the crash had leaked within days. Governments accused each other of hiding information. Religious leaders declared the end times had arrived. Stock markets crashed and recovered and crashed again. Protests erupted in major cities, with people demanding answers that their leaders could not provide. Alina ignored all of it. She had one job, and she intended to do it. On the 12th day, she finally cracked the code. She was alone in the lab at 3 in the morning, running another test on the symbol sequences. She had arranged 12 symbols in a circle based on her theory about their grammatical structure. When she activated the sensor array, the symbols began to glow brighter than ever before. Then, to her amazement, the surface of the object shifted. A new symbol appeared in the center, one she had never seen. It was more complex than the others, with layers and curves that seemed to move even as she watched. And beneath it, in perfect English letters, words appeared on the surface of the alien metal. "Communication established. Query, what do you seek?" Alina's hands trembled as she reached for the keyboard connected to her display terminal. She had no idea if her response would work, but she had to try. She typed, "We seek knowledge." The surface rippled again. New words appeared. "Knowledge requires understanding. Understanding requires patience. Are you willing to learn?" Alina smiled for the first time in 12 days. She typed her answer without hesitation. "Yes, teach us everything." The alien device began to glow with a steady blue light, and symbols started flowing across its surface like water. Data flooded into the connected computers faster than the processors could handle. Yuki and Kofi arrived within minutes, drawn by the alarms and alerts, and they stood beside Alina as they watched humanity's first real conversation with an intelligence from beyond the stars. The machine taught them through the night and into the next day. It explained concepts that took Alina weeks to understand, ideas about energy and matter and space that made her previous research look like children's drawings. It showed them how to build devices that could harvest power from the vacuum of space. It revealed materials that could be stronger than steel, but lighter than air. And it warned them. "Others will come," the machine's message read. "The builders of this device. They are not kind to young species. They see your world as empty. They see your people as obstacles. You must prepare. You must grow. You must become strong enough to defend yourselves." Alina felt cold fear grip her heart, but she did not let it stop her. She had always believed that humanity was not alone. Now she knew they were also not safe. But knowledge was power, and they had been given the greatest gift possible, a chance to learn. She turned to her team, determination blazing in her eyes. "We have work to do." The fate of human civilization rested on their shoulders, and Alina Vasquez was ready to carry that weight. 3 months after first contact with the alien device, Dr. Elena Vasquez stood before the United Nations General Assembly and presented humanity's survival plan. The chamber was packed with representatives from every nation on Earth. Presidents and prime ministers sat in the front rows. Military leaders lined the walls. Television cameras broadcast the meeting to every country, every city, every village that had electricity and a screen. Alina cleared her throat and began to speak. "The device we recovered has given us more information in 90 days than humanity has discovered in 10,000 years of civilization," she said. "It has shown us how to build machines we never imagined. It has taught us science we never dreamed of. But it has also warned us of a threat we cannot ignore." She pressed a button on her tablet, and holographic images appeared above the assembly. Strange ships with curved hulls and glowing engines, weapons that could crack planets like eggs, soldiers in armor that made them look more like machines than living beings. "The hegemony," Alina continued. "That is what the device calls them. A coalition of alien species that have controlled this region of the galaxy for thousands of years. They discovered Earth long ago. They have been watching us, and according to the device, they are coming." The chamber erupted into chaos. Representatives shouted questions and accusations. Some demanded proof. Others demanded action. A few simply sat in stunned silence, trying to process what they had heard. Alina waited until the noise died down before continuing. "We have approximately 50 years before the hegemony fleet arrives. That may sound like a long time, but consider what we need to do. We need to build ships that can travel between stars. We need to create weapons that can fight against enemies who have been waging war for millennia. We need to transform our entire civilization from a collection of competing nations into a united species that can defend itself." She paused, letting her words sink in. "The device has given us the tools to do all of this, but only if we work together. Every nation, every scientist, every engineer and worker and farmer. We cannot afford to waste a single resource on conflicts between ourselves. From this day forward, humanity must speak with one voice, or we will be silenced forever." The debate that followed lasted for 7 hours. Some nations wanted to keep the technology for themselves. Others refused to believe the threat was real. A few insisted that humanity should surrender to the hegemony rather than fight. But in the end, fear and hope proved stronger than selfishness and doubt. The vote passed with overwhelming support. The United Earth Defense Initiative was born, and Alina Vasquez was named its chief scientific officer. The next year was the hardest of Alina's life. She worked 20-hour days, traveling between laboratories and factories on every continent. She trained thousands of scientists to understand the alien technology. She argued with politicians who wanted faster results and engineers who said her designs were impossible. Dr. Kofi Mensah became her closest partner. He developed new materials based on the device's teachings, metals and plastics and ceramics that could withstand forces previously thought impossible. His factories produced hull plating that could stop lasers and missiles that could cross the distance between planets in hours. Dr. Yuki Tanaka focused on energy systems. The device had revealed the secret of fusion power, true fusion that was clean and efficient and practically unlimited. Within 18 months, fusion reactors were being installed in every major city. Within 3 years, the entire planet ran on power that cost almost nothing to produce. But Alina knew that fusion was just the beginning. The device had hinted at something greater, a power source that could bend space itself. She spent every spare moment studying the relevant symbol sequences, trying to understand the deeper secrets they contained. Meanwhile, humanity transformed itself. Old borders became meaningless as workers moved freely between countries to build the massive shipyards needed for the defense fleet. Languages merged and mixed as people from different cultures worked side by side. Children learned mathematics and physics as soon as they could hold a tablet, knowing that their generation would inherit a galaxy instead of just a planet. Not everyone approved of the changes. Some religious groups claimed the alien device was demonic and demanded it be destroyed. Some politicians used fear of the hegemony to grab power for themselves. Some scientists questioned whether the device's warnings were real or just a manipulation. Alina faced all of these challenges with patience and determination. She released every piece of evidence the device had provided. She opened her laboratories to independent observers. She gave speeches and interviews and answered every question as honestly as she could. "I don't know if we can win," she admitted during one famous broadcast. "The hegemony has been conquering worlds for longer than humans have existed. They have technology we can barely understand and armies larger than our entire population. But I know we have to try, because the alternative is extinction or slavery, and I refuse to accept either of those options." Her words inspired millions. Young people flooded into scientific and engineering programs. Factories ran around the clock producing components for the first defensive satellites. Governments that had spent centuries fighting each other now shared resources and knowledge freely. By the 5th year of the initiative, humanity launched its first starship. The Unity was beautiful in a rough, practical way. Its hull was dark metal studded with sensor arrays and weapon ports. Its engines glowed with the blue light of contained fusion reactions. It was small by the standards the device had shown them, barely large enough to carry a crew of 50, but it represented everything humanity had achieved. Alina stood on the observation deck of the new orbital station as the Unity prepared for its maiden voyage. Beside her, Kofi and Yuki watched with tears in their eyes. "We built this," Kofi whispered. "5 years ago, we thought reaching Mars would take decades. Now we're sending humans to another star." "The device helped us," Alina reminded him. "We couldn't have done any of this without the knowledge it provided." "But we did the work," Yuki said. "We learned, we adapted. We took alien concepts and made them our own. That matters, Alina. That proves we deserve a place in the galaxy." Alina nodded slowly. She had spent so much time focusing on the challenges ahead that she sometimes forgot to appreciate how far they had come. Humanity had transformed itself in 5 years. They had unified their planet, revolutionized their technology, and built the beginning of a space fleet. Whatever happened next, they had already achieved something remarkable. The Unity's engines flared to life, pushing the ship away from Earth's orbit. Alina watched it shrink into the distance until it was nothing but a point of light against the stars. "The device told me something yesterday," she said quietly. "Something I haven't shared with anyone yet." Kofi and Yuki turned to look at her with concern. "The hegemony isn't just coming to conquer us," Alina continued. "They're coming to test us. Every species in the galaxy went through something like this. A trial, a judgment. Those who passed were allowed to join the galactic community. Those who failed were destroyed or enslaved." "That sounds like the device is saying we have a chance," Yuki said hopefully. "Maybe, but the device also told me that most species fail. The hegemony doesn't want competitors. They set impossible standards because they expect failure. They want to find reasons to destroy or control every new species they encounter." Kofi frowned. "Then why did the device help us? Why give us knowledge if we're supposed to fail?" Alina smiled grimly. "Because the device wasn't built by the hegemony. It belonged to a species called the Architects. They were one of the few who passed the test and joined the galactic community as equals. But they didn't approve of how the hegemony treated younger species. So they created devices like ours and scattered them across the galaxy. Seeds of knowledge, hidden in places where developing species might find them. They wanted to give other species a fair chance," Yuki realized. "Exactly. The Architects are gone now, destroyed in a war with the hegemony thousands of years ago. But their devices survived. and now their gift to us might be the only thing that keeps humanity alive. Alina turned away from the observation window and faced her friends with determination burning in her eyes. We have 45 years left. That's not much time, but it's enough. We're going to build a fleet that can match anything the hegemony throws at us. We're going to develop weapons they've never seen and defenses they can't break. And when they arrive to judge us, we're going to show them that humanity refuses to fail. Kofi and Yuki nodded, their own determination matching hers. Where do we start? Kofi asked. Alina grinned. I've been working on something new. The device calls it spatial folding technology. If I'm right, it could let us move ships across the galaxy in hours instead of years. It could change everything. She led them back toward the laboratory, already explaining her theories and plans. Behind them, the stars waited, vast and cold and full of danger. Humanity's greatest test was coming. And Dr. Alina Vasquez was determined to make sure they passed. 20 years after the Unity's first flight, Earth's sky blazed with the light of 1,000 starships. Dr. Alina Vasquez, now 62 years old, watched the fleet maneuver from the command center of Prometheus Station, humanity's largest orbital facility. Her hair had turned silver over the decades, and lines marked her face from years of stress and responsibility. But her eyes still held the same fire they had when she first saw the alien device in that MIT laboratory. Admiral Chen reports the 7th Fleet is in position, announced a young officer at a nearby console. All defense platforms are active. Lunar installations confirm full readiness. Alina nodded without turning away from the massive display screen that dominated the room. The screen showed a tactical view of the solar system, with Earth at the center and concentric rings marking the positions of various defensive installations. Ships were represented by small blue dots, hundreds of them spread across the system in carefully planned formations. 20 years of work had transformed humanity from a single-planet species into a true spacefaring civilization. Colonies existed on Mars, Venus, and half a dozen moons. Mining operations extracted resources from asteroid belts and comets. Research stations orbited distant planets, studying everything from atmospheric chemistry to gravitational anomalies. But the greatest achievement was the fleet. Human ships had evolved dramatically since the Unity. The current generation used spatial folding engines that allowed them to cross light years in minutes. Their weapons could crack asteroids and vaporize other ships at distances measured in thousands of kilometers. Their shields could withstand impacts that would have destroyed entire cities. All of this came from the alien device's teachings, combined with human creativity and determination. Alina and her team had not simply copied the technology they were given. They had improved it, adapted it, made it their own. The device had provided knowledge, but humans had provided innovation. "Ma'am," the young officer approached Alina cautiously. "We're receiving a transmission from deep space. It matches the communication protocols the device taught us." Alina's heart skipped a beat. This was the moment she had spent 20 years preparing for. "Put it on the main screen." The tactical display flickered and changed, showing a simple message in both the alien symbolic language and translated English. "Hegemony Assessment Fleet will arrive in your system in 30 standard rotations. Prepare for evaluation. Resistance is futile but not forbidden." A chill ran through the command center. Officers exchanged nervous glances. Someone dropped a tablet and the clatter echoed in the sudden silence. Alina read the message twice, then turned to face the room. 30 days, she said calmly. "That's more than we expected. The device predicted they would give us only 7 days warning." She allowed herself a small smile. "Either they're overconfident or they want to give us time to be afraid. We're going to use that time to make sure they regret both options." The tension in the room eased slightly as officers returned to their tasks with renewed focus. Elena had learned over the years that her calm demeanor had a powerful effect on those around her. When she showed confidence, others believed victory was possible. In truth, she was terrified. The device had shown her the hegemony's capabilities. Their ships were larger and more numerous than anything humanity could produce. Their weapons had been refined through thousands of years of warfare. Their soldiers were trained from birth for combat and enhanced with cybernetic implants that made them faster, stronger, and more resilient than any human. On paper, the odds were hopeless. But Elena had never put much faith in paper. She moved to a private communication console and contacted her old friends. Kofi appeared first, his face showing the years even more than hers. He had spent the last 2 decades leading the Materials Development Division, creating new substances that pushed the boundaries of physics. "I heard," he said before she could speak. 30 days. My people are already working on upgrades for the shield generators. If we can increase energy absorption by even 15%, it could make a real difference." "Good. What about the new armor plating?" "The quantum-bonded titanium. We've got enough to refit about a quarter of the fleet. I'll prioritize the heavy cruisers and carrier ships." Yuki joined the conversation from her laboratory on Mars. Despite her age, she looked vibrant and energetic, a side effect of spending decades in lower gravity. "I've been working on something special," she announced with barely contained excitement. "The device mentioned something called resonance weapons. I think I've finally figured out how they work. If I'm right, we could disable enemy ships without destroying them, turn their own technology against them." Elena felt hope stir in her chest. "How long until you have a working prototype?" "With full resources, 2 weeks, but I'll need help from the fleet engineers to adapt it for ship-mounted deployment." "You'll have whatever you need. I'll make sure of it." The 3 scientists continued planning through the night, coordinating research teams and production facilities across the solar system. By morning, every factory and laboratory under human control was working toward a single goal: preparing for the battle that would decide humanity's fate. The next 30 days passed in a blur of activity. Ships were refitted with new weapons and defensive systems. Soldiers trained in simulations based on everything the device had revealed about hegemony tactics. Engineers installed resonance emitters on key vessels. Scientists fine-tuned energy systems and targeting algorithms. Elena barely slept, moving between stations and ships to inspect preparations and boost morale. She gave speeches to crews and workers, reminding them of what they were fighting for. "We are not just defending ourselves," she told a group of fighter pilots during one visit. "We are defending the principle that every species deserves a chance to grow and thrive. The hegemony believes they have the right to judge us, to decide whether we live or die based on their standards. We're going to show them that humanity makes its own judgments and writes its own destiny." The pilots cheered, and Elena saw determination replace fear in their eyes. On the 29th day, the alien device spoke to her for the first time in years. Elena was alone in her quarters on Prometheus Station when the personal terminal on her desk activated without warning. The now familiar symbols scrolled across the screen, followed by translated text. "The architects believed in your species. They saw potential in your creativity and resilience. Many species have received knowledge from devices like me. Few have accomplished what you have accomplished. You have honored the architect's gift." Elena stared at the screen, tears forming in her eyes. She had wondered for 20 years whether the device was truly intelligent or just an advanced computer following programmed instructions. This message suggested something deeper. "Will we survive tomorrow?" she asked aloud, knowing the device could process verbal communication. Probability calculations are uncertain. The hegemony has never encountered a species that advanced this quickly with architect technology. Your innovations have created variables they will not expect. This could work in your favor or against you. That's not very comforting. Comfort is not my purpose. Knowledge is my purpose. You have received all the knowledge I can provide. What you do with it now is your choice. The screen went dark. Alina sat in silence for a long moment, then stood and straightened her uniform. Tomorrow would decide everything. The morning of the 30th day, Alina stood on the bridge of the United Earth ship Defiance, humanity's flagship. The ship was massive, nearly 3 kilometers long, bristling with weapons and carrying the most advanced systems human engineers had ever created. Around her, officers worked at their stations with focused calm. Admiral Chen, a former Chinese naval commander who had risen through the ranks of the unified Earth fleet, stood at the central command platform. Alina remained nearby as chief scientific advisor, ready to help interpret any alien technology they encountered. "Contact," announced the sensor officer. "Multiple spatial distortions at the edge of the system. The hegemony fleet is arriving." The main display shifted to show the incoming ships. Alina felt her breath catch in her throat. There were hundreds of them, massive vessels with hulls that gleamed like polished obsidian, surrounded by swarms of smaller craft. The largest ship in the formation was bigger than Prometheus Station, a floating fortress that dwarfed anything humanity had built. "That's the assessment carrier," Alina said quietly. "The device described it to us. It carries the judges who will determine our fate." Admiral Chen nodded grimly. "All fleet elements assume defensive positions, weapons charged but not deployed. We follow established first contact protocols until they give us a reason to change approach." The human fleet moved into formation, ships spreading out to create overlapping fields of fire while maintaining defensive coherence. Everyone understood that the opening moments of contact would be critical. The hegemony expected primitive savages. They would find something very different. The alien fleet stopped at the outer edge of the solar system. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then a transmission came through on all frequencies. "Species designated human. You have received architect contamination. Present yourselves for evaluation or face immediate purification." Alina looked at Admiral Chen. He looked back at her with a question in his eyes. "Contamination," she said. "They see knowledge as a disease. They want to keep younger species ignorant and weak so they can never challenge hegemony dominance." "Then let's show them we're already strong." Chen activated the fleet-wide communication system. "Attention hegemony fleet. We are the United Earth Defense Force. We do not recognize your authority to judge or evaluate our species. If you wish to establish diplomatic relations based on mutual respect, we welcome the opportunity. If you intend to attack us, we are prepared to defend ourselves. The choice is yours." The alien response came quickly. "Your defiance is noted and will factor into evaluation. Combat assessment will now begin." The massive hegemony fleet surged forward, and the battle for humanity's future began. The first wave of alien fighters screamed toward the human lines, their engines leaving trails of fire across the void. Admiral Chen's voice rang out across the fleet communications. "All point defense systems, engage. Launch interceptor squadrons Alpha through Delta. Heavy cruisers, maintain formation integrity." Alina watched the battle unfold on the tactical display, her heart pounding. Thousands of small craft clashed in the space between the two fleets. Human fighters, piloted by men and women who had trained their entire lives for this moment, weaved through enemy formations with desperate skill. The first human casualties came within minutes. Ships exploded, sending debris spinning into the darkness. But for every human fighter lost, 3 alien craft were destroyed. The resonance weapons Yuki had developed were working even better than expected, disrupting enemy shields and leaving ships vulnerable to conventional attacks. "They're surprised," Alina observed, studying the alien fleet's movements. "Their tactics assume we can't penetrate their defenses. When our weapons work, they don't know how to adapt." Let's keep them off balance, Chen replied. He issued orders, and the human fleet began a series of coordinated maneuvers that the crew had practiced countless times in simulation. The battle raged for hours. The hegemony threw wave after wave of ships at the human lines, expecting to overwhelm them through sheer numbers. But the defenders held firm. Energy shields absorbed devastating blows that would have destroyed any vessel from 20 years ago. Weapons platforms fired with precision that alien sensors could not predict or track. Alina found herself moving around the bridge, offering suggestions based on her knowledge of alien technology. When a new type of weapon appeared on enemy ships, she quickly analyzed its energy signature and recommended countermeasures. When communication signals suggested the enemy was preparing a concentrated assault, she helped coordinate the response. Dr. Vasquez, the communications officer, called out, "We're receiving a transmission from the Hegemony command ship. They're requesting to speak with you directly." Alina froze, me specifically. "Yes, ma'am. They addressed you by name and title." Admiral Chen gave her a questioning look. Alina took a deep breath and nodded. "Put it through." The main display shifted to show an alien face. Alina had seen images from the device, but seeing a living hegemony commander was different. The being had gray skin stretched over angular bones, eyes that reflected light like mirrors, and mandibles that clicked and twitched as it spoke. A translation system converted its words to English with only a slight delay. "Dr. Alina Vasquez, Chief Scientist of the Human Resistance, we have studied your transmissions and identified you as the primary source of human technological advancement. Your work with the Architect device has been impressive, troublesome, but impressive." Alina straightened her spine. "I didn't do it alone. Every human on this planet and beyond contributed to our development. We learned together. We grew together. That's something your hegemony will never understand." The alien made a sound that might have been laughter. "We understand collective effort. We simply consider it inefficient. Individual species have individual limits. The hegemony combines the strengths of dozens of species into one unified force. You believe your cooperation is special, but it is merely primitive. And yet your unified force is losing to our primitive species." The alien's expression shifted, mandibles clicking faster. "Losing. This is merely the evaluation phase. We have committed less than 5% of our fleet to this engagement. The main force remains in reserve." Alina felt ice form in her stomach, but she kept her face calm. "Then, why are you talking to me instead of attacking? Why take time to communicate if you're so confident of victory?" Silence stretched between them. When the alien spoke again, its tone had changed slightly. "You are unexpected. The Architect devices have aided many species, but none have adapted so quickly. None have improved upon what they were given. Your resonance weapons, for example, the Architects never developed that application. Your people did. We're creative. It's one of our strongest traits. It is also one of your most dangerous. Creative species destabilize established orders. They ask questions that should not be asked. They seek changes that should not be made." The alien leaned closer to whatever sensor was transmitting its image. "This evaluation will end one of two ways, Dr. Vasquez. Either humanity will submit to hegemony oversight and accept restrictions on your development, or you will be classified as a contamination threat and scheduled for purification. There is no third option." Alina glanced at Admiral Chen. He gave her a small nod of support. She turned back to face the alien commander. "There's always a third option," she said. "You just haven't seen it yet." She signaled for the transmission to end, then moved to Admiral Chen's side. "That was a stalling tactic," she told him quietly. "They're bringing up reserves, probably preparing a major assault. We need to do something they don't expect." "What do you suggest?" Alina thought about everything the device had taught her. About the hegemony, about the Architects, about the history of galactic civilization, and she thought about what the hegemony commander had said. Creative species ask questions that should not be asked. The assessment carrier, she said slowly, that's their command ship. It carries the judges, the leaders, the decision makers. If we can disable it without destroying it, we might be able to force a negotiation. Chen studied the tactical display. The carrier is heavily defended. We'd lose half our remaining fleet just getting close to it. Not if we use spatial folding to bypass their defenses. A small strike force, jumping directly to the carrier's position, delivering the resonance weapons at point-blank range. That's incredibly risky. The energy required for a precise fold of that distance would be enormous, but we've been holding back our deepest reserves for exactly this kind of situation. Alina pulled up technical specifications on a nearby console. I've been working on enhanced fold equations for years. I believe we can do this. Admiral Chen was quiet for a long moment, weighing the options. Then he nodded slowly. Prepare the strike force. You'll command it personally. Alina blinked. Me, I'm a scientist, not a military commander. You understand the technology better than anyone. You developed the resonance weapons. You know the alien systems inside and out. If anyone can make this work, it's you. Chen placed a hand on her shoulder. I'll coordinate the main fleet to create a diversion. You take the strike force and end this battle. The fate of humanity is in your hands, Doctor. Alina wanted to argue. She wanted to point out that she was 62 years old, that she had never commanded troops in combat, that there were surely better qualified officers for this mission. But she looked at the tactical display, at the thousands of ships fighting and dying to protect their home, and she knew Chen was right. This was her responsibility. This had always been her responsibility, ever since she first touched the alien device and set humanity on this path. I'll get it done, she said. 2 hours later, Alina stood on the bridge of a strike cruiser called the Arrow, surrounded by volunteers who had accepted a mission with almost zero chance of survival. The small fleet included 10 ships equipped with enhanced spatial folding engines and full resonance weapon arrays. All ships report ready, announced the Arrow's captain, a young woman named Lieutenant Commander Hayes. Fold calculations are locked, waiting for your order, Dr. Vasquez. Alina looked at the tactical display one more time. The main fleet was engaging the hegemony in a carefully choreographed dance, drawing enemy ships away from the assessment carrier. A narrow window of opportunity was opening. Begin fold sequence, she ordered. Take us in. The universe twisted around them. Alina had experienced spatial folding before, but never at this distance or precision. The sensation was indescribable, like being stretched and compressed simultaneously, like existing in multiple places at once. Colors that had no names flashed before her eyes. Then reality snapped back into place, and they were there. The assessment carrier loomed before them, so massive it filled the entire forward view screen. Its hull was covered with sensor arrays and weapon platforms, any one of which could destroy the Arrow in seconds. Fire everything, Alina commanded. All ships, maximum resonance bombardment now. The strike force unleashed its full arsenal. Waves of resonance energy slammed into the carrier's shields, creating interference patterns that spread like cracks in glass. Systems began to fail across the massive vessel. Lights flickered. Weapons went offline. The great ship shuddered and listed to one side. It's working, Hayes shouted. Their shields are collapsing. But the hegemony was not helpless. Return fire erupted from surviving weapon platforms. The strike force ships tried to evade, but in such close quarters, evasion was nearly impossible. One ship exploded, then another. The Arrow itself took a glancing hit that sent crew members tumbling across the bridge. Alina pulled herself back to her feet, blood running from a cut on her forehead. Maintain fire, we're almost through. The final shields collapsed, and the resonance weapons struck the carrier's hull directly. Systems failed catastrophically. The great ship went dark, power completely disrupted. "Carrier is disabled," Hayes reported, her voice shaking with exhaustion and relief. "All enemy weapons offline. Life support appears minimal." Elena slumped into a nearby chair, her body trembling. They had done it. Against all odds, they had done it. "Open a communication channel to the hegemony fleet," she ordered. "Let's see if they're ready to talk now." The response came quickly. The alien commander appeared on screen, but this time it was aboard a different ship, and its expression had changed completely. "This is unprecedented," the alien said slowly. "No species has ever disabled an assessment carrier. No species has ever." "There's always a first time," Elena replied. "Now let's discuss that third option I mentioned." The negotiations lasted for 3 days. In the end, the hegemony agreed to withdraw from human space and recognize Earth's government as an independent member of the galactic community. It was not the complete victory Elena had hoped for, but it was far more than anyone had expected. The assessment carrier was towed back to Earth, where it became the foundation for a new research facility. Its technology, combined with human innovation, would push civilization even further forward in the decades to come. Elena Vasquez became the most famous person in human history, though she always insisted the credit belonged to everyone who had worked and fought and sacrificed for humanity's survival. "We didn't win because of me," she said during a ceremony honoring the fallen. "We won because we refused to accept the limitations others tried to place on us. We won because we learned and adapted and grew. We won because we are human, and that means we never give up." 20 years later, Elena passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 82. By then, human ships were exploring galaxies that previous generations had never dreamed of reaching. Colonies flourished on hundreds of worlds. The hegemony, challenged by multiple species who had been inspired by humanity's example, had begun to reform its most oppressive policies. On the day of her funeral, every ship in the human fleet fired a single volley of resonance energy into space, creating a wave of light that rippled outward toward the stars. It was a farewell and a promise, a tribute to the woman who had harnessed alien knowledge and transformed it into hope. In the years that followed, other species would encounter humanity for the first time. They would ask how such a young civilization had accomplished so much so quickly. The answer was always the same. "We had teachers," the humans would explain. "Alien devices that gave us knowledge we never could have discovered on our own. But knowledge alone means nothing. What matters is what you do with it. We chose to innovate. We chose to adapt. We chose to fight for our future instead of accepting the fate others wanted to give us." Some species tried to replicate humanity's success. Some succeeded. Some failed. But all of them learned the same lesson that Elena Vasquez had taught the galaxy. Technology can be gifted. Knowledge can be shared. But the drive to use them to push beyond limitations, to reach for something greater that comes from within. Humanity had looked at the stars and refused to be afraid. And the universe had never been the same.